students, how do you feel when your mother gives you a glass of mango shake in the month of November and December? I know you feel very good, but do you know how this is possible? This is only possible because we have different techniques of preservation and the science of preservation, and because of this, the mango is available to you during the month of winter. So today we are here to learn about the different techniques of chemical preservation and the food additives that are added in the food in order to give a better shelf life to particular food items. Now, before going into the chemical preservation and the other techniques, let us first understand what is food. When I talk about food, the food has been classified according to their pH, and this pH is very important while we go in for the chemical preservation. According to the pH, the food has been broadly classified into 4 important groups. The first group has got a high amount of acid and therefore the pH is about 3.7. The apple, lemon and raspberry come into this category. The second category is the one which is having an acid and having a pH of 3.7 to 4.6. The oranges, olive and tomatoes come into this category. And the third is medium acidic group, which is having a pH of 4.6 to 5.3. Bread, cheese and carrots are included in this group of food. While the fourth category is the food having low amount of acid, having a pH over 5.3. Meat, fish and most of the vegetables are categorized into this group. Now pH is very important for the preservation. Therefore, when we go on for the preservation, we talk about preservative, that means the substances which are to be added to the food according to their pH. Therefore, we are having 3 different types of preservatives. One is called natural preservative, second is chemical preservative and the third is biopreservative. We begin our study with the natural preservatives. Natural preservatives take into account the substances which are naturally or spontaneously added to a food while we go in for the cooking process. For example, salt, sugar, vinegar and then wood smoke. All these help in the preservation technique as they have got an antimicrobial activity too. The process when we add the salt to a particular food is known as salting. Here the addition of the brine solution or the salt solution takes place. This salt solution is having a concentration which is above 18%. That means 1 cup full of salt is added in 5 cups full of water. The addition of the salt has got following effects and therefore helps in the preservation technique. The first one is it causes high osmotic pressure and hence the plasmolysis of the cell takes place. It hydrates the food and the microbial cells, so the microbes that is present inside the food, and therefore the microbes are not able to survive. It ionizes the chlorine ion which is harmful to the organism, that means the microorganism which is growing inside the food. It reduces the solubility of oxygen in water, therefore scarcity of oxygen in the food takes place and the microbes are not able to reproduce nor they survive. It also sensitizes the cell against carbon dioxide and it interferes with the action of the proteolytic enzyme. Because of all these activity, the salt is considered as a very good preservative and which is added naturally in a food item. The other process where we add sugar in the food is known as sugaring. Now sugaring has got the same activity like the salting, but the only difference is you have to add 6 times more amount of sugar than salt in order to have the same degree of inhibition of the microbial activity present in the food. The sugar dissolves in water and therefore the water which is present inside the food is not available to the microorganisms and they won't survive and therefore the spoilage of the food does not take place. The microorganisms are rarely known to survive at a sugar concentration which is more than 20 to 25%. However, for preservation, we use the sugar concentration between 65% and 85%. The different preparation that we have by sugaring process is chutneys, the milk is stored in the form of condensed milk, or we have preparation of cakes that can be stored at room temperature because of the presence of high amount of sugar. The other natural preservation process is called smoking, where wood smoke is used for the preservation of the food items like fish, ham, bacon, beef or soya beans. Here in this method, the surface drying of the food material takes place by the heat that is produced after burning of the wood, and this surface drying is not reliable till we punch it with another method, which can be a method of drying or which can be a method of salting. The smoke which is coming out from the wood can also be obtained from other plant material, for example, the corn cobs of the maize. The smoke is very good because it adds flavor to the food item. It has got a dermicidal effect and aids in the preservation. As I already told you, it helps in the drying process. It also takes out many chemicals, or after the smoke is being given to the food items, the chemicals so produced helps in the inhibition of the microbial activity. A gloss finish is given to the food item after smoking, and also the meat becomes more tender after it is exposed to the wood smoke. After smoke, we have other natural preservative, which is spice, oil and essential oil. Now, spices are used in our daily cooking process. For example, we have presence of cumin, coriander, turmeric, pepper, cardamom. All these spices help in the preservation of food because they have got antimicrobial activity. Now, these spices are able to inhibit the gram-positive bacteria. However, the lactic acid is not inhibited, and the gram-negative bacteria are not sensitive to this type of preservatives. The oils are also used for the preservation process, or it is used as a natural preservative where we can preserve the vegetables for a much longer time in different oils like mustard oil or olive oil. Here you can see the vegetables are being preserved in the olive oil. Also, the different type of vegetables can be preserved in the mustard oil. As oil is there, the food or the fresh perishable food item is not exposed to the environment nor to the microbe, and therefore no spoilage of the food items takes place. Coming on to the essential oils, that means these oils are present in the plant material in a very minute amount, and their presence or the concentration of these essential oil varies. For example, the allicin, which is present in garlic, is found to be there at a concentration of 0.3 to 0.5%. However, in the case of another essential oil, which is eugenol, found in clove, it is present at a concentration of 16 to 18%. Now, since the concentration is very much variable, the MIC or minimum inhibitory concentration of these essential oil could not be calculated. However, they are very much helpful for the preservation of different perishable food items. Coming on to the second category of preservative, and that is called the chemical preservative. Now, chemical preservative takes into account the chemicals which are added into the food which will not cause any harm and therefore helps to increase the shelf life of the food, which could be consumed safely by the human or by the animals. Therefore, we say that all the chemicals could not be used as preservative. The chemicals which are used as preservative or as food additives are known as GRAS or GRAS. That means generally recognized as safe chemicals. So, whenever we add a chemical in the food item for preservation technique, that chemical has to be a GRAS chemical. And the characteristic feature of this GRAS chemical should be like this. It should exhibit a wide variety of antimicrobial activity. It should be non-toxic to the human as well as to the animal. It should be economical, not too expensive. It should not have any effect on the flavor, the aroma or the color of the original food item that is going to be preserved. It should not be inactivated by the food or food enzymes, and it should not encourage the development of the resistant strain. Now, any chemical which has got all these property will be tagged as GRAS chemical, and therefore we refer this chemical as a food additive. So let us now learn about the different types of chemicals that are used as the food additives in the food industry for the preservation of the food in order to increase the shelf life of the different food items. The first category of chemicals that we use is organic acids and their salts. The most important organic acid that is known to all of us and that is used by all of us is vinegar. Do you know what this vinegar is? This vinegar is nothing but acetic acid. We add this vinegar or acetic acid in many food items and therefore help in the preservation method. There is another chemical which is used is sodium, potassium and calcium diacetates dihydroacetic acid at a concentration of 0.1%, which is having a pH of 5.1. This is used in the bread or for the manufacturing of the bread, and as a result of this chemical, the bread could have a shelf life of 6 days at 30 degrees Celsius. Also, it inhibits the growth of bacillus and therefore the bread can be kept at a room temperature. Another acetate is sodium acetate, which is kept or added at an amount of 1%, which increases the shelf life of catfish for 6 days at 4 degrees Celsius. Benzoic acid and parabens are again the organic acids which are used for the preservation. Now, benzoic acid acts, or it has got a very good antimicrobial activity at a low pH, which is about 2.5 to 4. However, this is not effective at higher pH. Benzoic acid is commonly used in apple cider, soft drinks, jams and jellies, in fruit salads, mango pickles, or in different type of pickles, in the tomato ketchup, in different fruit salads also this has been used. Now, benzoic acid is used at a concentration of 0.1% and it is basically an inhibitor of yeast and mold. Yeast and mold are the organisms which grow at an acidic pH. Therefore, there is much chances of growth of yeast and mold at acidic pH or low pH, and at this low pH, if you add benzoic acid as a food additive, you are able to preserve the food for a much longer time because it inhibits the growth of yeast and mold. Parabens are also very important for the preservation. Like the ethyl and the methyl paraben, they are extensively used in the food industry. They are basically the proton ionophores. They disrupt the cell membrane, and after disruption of the cell membrane, the internal pH of the cell, which is higher than the external pH, they get dissociated and therefore they hamper the microbes which are growing inside the food item. Therefore, this paraben can also be used as a food additive, and it has got an advantage over benzoate because they can act at a much higher pH. Coming on to the sorbic acid or sorbates. Now, sorbic acid or sorbates are used in the food item, and the concentration of this sorbic acid should not exceed 0.2%. This is very good for preservation because it has got an antimicrobial activity. And the different salts of sorbic acid like calcium, potassium and sodium salts are also being used. This is mainly used in the cheese industry or in the fruit juices, beverages, fruit jellies and jams, pickles, etc. It also is effective against yeast, molds and catalase positive bacteria. The fatty acid esters are also important as chemical preservative. Mainly the glyceryl monolaurate is one of the fatty acid preservative which is used in order to inhibit the growth of bacillus at 100 microgram per ml concentration. Propionic acid is another acid which is used for the preservation of the bread. Whenever we are going to make the bread, if we add propionic acid to the bread dough, we can preserve or we can increase the shelf life of the bread for a much longer time. This propionic acid is again an inhibitor of the mold, and it should not be used at a concentration which is more than 0.32%. Nitrites and nitrates. Now, nitrites and nitrates are very important for the curing of the meat. The curing of the meat means how can we retain the color of the meat as well as the freshness of the meat. Now, if we go on to the biochemical reaction that is taking place during the preservation of the meat, we find that if we add nitrate in the meat or the meat which is going to be preserved, this nitrate is converted to nitrite by the bacterial action. The nitrite so produced in the acidic environment gets converted to nitrous acid. The nitrous acid, after being reduced, is converted to nitric oxide, and this nitric oxide now reacts with myoglobin, which is present in the muscle of the meat. Here you can see the structure of the myoglobin, which is a ferrous globin protein, and this myoglobin, after it reacts with nitric oxide, gets converted to nitrosomyoglobin. And this nitrosomyoglobin is the one which retains the red color of the meat. And this nitrosomyoglobin, if given heat, may be converted to nitrosochemochrome, which is somewhat pink in color. Therefore, in order to preserve the meat, in order to retain the color of the meat, the nitrate and the nitrites are being used as the preservatives. Now, these preservatives are very important, but it has got a limitation. The limitation or the only problem with this is, whenever we add nitrates or the nitrites, if they react with the secondary amines in the food item or in the environment, there is formation of nitrosamines. Now, these nitrosamines are tagged as bad compounds because they are carcinogenic and may lead to the development of cancer. And therefore, this is a very strong limitation for the use of nitrites and nitrates in the food item for preservation. Coming on to another chemical preservative, and that is sulfur dioxide. Now, sulfur dioxide along with sodium and potassium salts of sulfite, bisulfite and metasulfite is used for preservation of many syrups, fruit juices and in many light colored dehydrated foods. It is used at a concentration which is about 200 to 300 parts per million. The potassium metabisulphite is commonly used as a stable source of sulfur dioxide. Now, this potassium metabisulphite reacts with the citric acid. That means I was talking about the pH of the food. If the food has got presence of citric acid, it reacts with potassium metabisulphite and there is formation of potassium citrate along with sulfur dioxide and water. This sulfur dioxide so formed now reacts with water and there is formation of sulfurous acid, which is harmful to the microbial cells which is present in the food and therefore inhibits the growth of microbes and helps in the preservation of the food. There are many flavoring agents which are used for the preservation. One of the important flavoring agents that we use is diacetyl. This diacetyl imparts the aroma of the butter. The diacetyl are, or we can say the most of the flavoring agents are more antifungal than antibacterial. They are effective against non-lactic gram-positive bacteria, but they are resistant against the lactic acid bacteria. The other flavoring agents that is known to us or in the food industry is 2,3-pentane-dione or levocarbon, dextrocarbon, phenyl acetaldehyde. All these are used as a flavoring agents because they not only gives a flavor to the food item, they help in the preservation too. Coming on to the third category of preservative, and that is biopreservative. Now, biopreservative is referring to a set of substances which are not chemically produced. They are the substances which are having a biochemical origin. That means they are coming from a biological source. We come to know this only after the discovery of the egg white lysozyme. Now, the egg white lysozyme is employed in the cheese industry as a preservative because this inhibits the growth of Clostridium tidobutyricum and therefore the gas production does not take place and the curing or the production of the cheese takes place in a very good amount. The activation of the lactoperoxidase system is also very important in those countries like India where pasteurization does not take place immediately after milking. or where the refrigerated transport system is not there. Now in our country, we cannot immediately pasteurize or refrigerate the milk in order to preserve it for a much longer time. However, if the activation of the lactoperoxidase system takes place, which is a biopreservation system, we are able to store a heavy amount of milk for a much longer time. Plant-derived antimicrobials are again very important source of biopreservative, and therefore they are coming out from different herbs and spices which has got an antimicrobial activity and can be used for the preservation. The third important category of biopreservative is microbial products. Now microbial products take into account the two different things. One is antibiotic and the other one is bacteriocides. Antibiotics which are produced from number of bacteria and fungus, and the bacteriocides which are produced from bacteria and act against particular genus of bacteria only. Two important antibiotic that is normally used for the preservation is Nicene and natamycin. Nicene is produced by Lactococcus lactis and it is a bacteriocide which inhibits the growth of other species of Lactococcus in the food item, and natamycin is produced from Streptomyces natalensis and therefore inhibits the growth of other microorganisms that may spoil the food. Therefore, all these techniques and preservation items shows that we have numerous types of preservative that can be used. They can be natural preservative, chemical preservative or biopreservative, and therefore if they are added as food additive in the food, we can have a much longer shelf life of the food, and therefore you can have apples in summer months and the mangoes in the winter months. Thank you.